Hi, Yan. It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm super excited about introducing you to a fellow audience, to people who are also cloud engineers or are recruiting cloud engineers, because you have a lot of experience with cloud as such, and especially AWS cloud. You are the certified AWS Hero. And for the last several years, you've been working with companies as a full-time employee, but also as an independent consultant, right? So why don't we start with your role that was 5 years ago, roughly, when you were working at the AZN and you grew the team from 3 to over 200 people. Some of them worked in the cloud, some of them in the backend. So what was it like? Like, what does it feel like to be a part of the team that grows so quickly within such a short time frame?
Yeah, sure. So maybe a short, I guess, a short introduction about the zone. So DAZN, the zone is what we used to call Netflix for sports streaming, because it was one of the biggest players in that live sports streaming sort of space. It was super well funded, in a multi-billion-dollar company, but they had a real problem in terms of hiring people within London, but also just more broadly as well. I think part of the problem, at least when I joined the company as one of the first few, I guess, full-time engineers in the team, was as the principal back then, was that I think they were working with some local recruitment agencies who were a little bit overly aggressive. And so a lot of candidates were being bombarded by recruiter emails about the same position. And also nobody knew who they were because they were not live in the London or in the UK market. So I think they were live in a few countries in Europe. I think they were streaming Bundesliga and a few other sort of sports leagues, and there was I think they were the exclusive rights holder for the J League and a few other places like that, but they were not live in the UK because they didn't have the Premier League rights. So nobody in the local market where the team was knew who they were, so they had a real hard time hiring people. Um, and then after a few years, as part of the work, a lot of the work that we did around recruitment and fixing the hiring process, we're able to grow the team to I think, about 250 people across multiple regions. We also opened an office in Amsterdam, where I'm based now, and we had a lot of people over here, and many of them have since to move on to work for AWS. In fact, the AWS office in Amsterdam has a clique of people who used to work for the zone, many of whom I had interviewed personally and worked with as well. And so I guess from the moment I joined the company, it was pretty clear that even though I joined as a principal and looking after the AWS and cloud side of things, I wanted to focus on the engineering side of things. But then it's pretty clear to me early on that forget all the technical stuff we got to do. We got to have people in the company to be able to do that. The first version of the system that the zone had was built by external agencies, and the company wanted to move move stuff in house and have their own engineering team looking after the system to be able to improve it, and then make big changes to the system going forward. But to do that, they obviously need to have a fair amount of people to be able to do that. And they had this massive problem in terms of hiring and recruitment. So a couple of things I did to try to fix the problem. One is address the issue that nobody knew who we were. So we spent a lot of time. I mean, even before I joined the company, I had been quite active in the speaking circuit. So I spoke at a lot of conferences before that. But during that 2018, 2019 kind of time frame, I really stepped up my speaking engagement. I was traveling maybe once every week. I was doing, I don't know, 40, 50 talks a year, to mostly around just sort of London and area, so that more people find out about who we are, what we do, and give them a reason to join us, because the zone was building something that's really interesting technically. It's a product that's being used by millions of people when we stream one of the live sports for, say, I don't know if you follow football very much, but imagine Barcelona plays Real Madrid. We will have over millions of concurrent viewers at peak. Wow. So technically, it's very, very challenging, very, very interesting stuff. But nobody knew who we were and all the interesting things that they could do at the zone. So yeah, I spent a lot of time traveling and speaking in conferences, representing the zone in the public, and so that helped us in terms of just getting people, giving people the idea of, okay, who the zone is and what are some of the things that they get to work with if they were to join. The other side of the equation is, first, you got to fix the demand problem, sorry, the supply problem of talent. The other side of things is to fix the interview process. We had the coding exercises like most companies do, but the problem is that the way the code submissions were evaluated was just all over the place. And I saw examples of candidates who were rejected for reasons that are just super subjective. Someone would say, "Oh, I don't like this code submission because the way they organize the files into folders or the way they name variables, it just doesn't make sense." But I think one thing when a lot of people when they evaluate the coding exercise submissions, they kind of overlook is the fact that a lot of what we do when we say taking on one of the coding examples is just a reflection of the habits that we build at our current working place. So a lot of time we see some of those things that maybe we don't agree with. That is just a reflection of how the place the person is currently working at, the conventions that they use in that particular context. They're just bringing the day-to-day habits into what they do when they have to do an interview and submit a coding exercise submission, otherwise these are really good candidates who can do a job in the company. Were being rejected for fairly trivial reasons, and so we decided to, okay, let's look at how we interview, how we evaluate, and decide to make decisions on those interview processes. And one of that was to change the way we evaluate coding submissions, but more importantly, we had to first identify what are the skill sets that we actually need. So I talked to everyone in the company, all the engineers, and to figure out, okay, maybe there's like 10 different skills that we are looking for, and put them onto, like, I don't know if it's play the football games or sports games or watch maybe, I guess, more of an American sports kind of thing where they often present this spider chart of the different skill levels for a player, how many runs they make, how many hits and how many assists and scores and dribbles and whatever they do. So you represent the different skills levels on a spider chart. So we basically identify those different important skills that we are looking for. And then we basically come up with a scoring system that goes from 1 to 10, and 1 being absolute beginner, and then 10, well, the fact that we are a well-funded company, we want to hire the best people in the world, and so your scoring system needs to be able to support that massive range of different skill levels. And so we said 10 is going to be, one of the top people in the world. Maybe you're the guy that wrote the book on the subject that we are interested in.
Well, that's impressive indeed, and I'm just taking notes as you speak, so that we can kind of dive deeper and follow up on what you just said. With regards to the spider chart, I understand you did it, and not you personally, but within the company, you guys did it across different roles, right? Is this something that is available somewhere open source for the community to play with, or is it an internal document in the company?
It was internal document, so it's something that I thought about, posting or writing about, but then they never found quite the right format. But it's something that I think more people can probably benefit from. Just maybe even just identifying the common problems I've seen in the interview process. Which there are plenty, just too many subjective opinions, personal opinions, so lack of consistency. But I think companies like Google and a few others have talked about this in the past as well, in terms of the importance in the consistency, in terms of having a structured set of questions. I've interviewed companies like Amazon as well. They have similar thing where they do have a kind of a standard bank of questions they will often ask, and also how to evaluate those answers and how to assess them. Now, obviously, Amazon or AWS is very big on the whole leadership principles thing. So they got specific questions about each one of them to help them, assess a candidate on each of those leadership qualities in a consistent way. So, I didn't come up with any of these ideas myself. It's just, things I've seen, and trying to apply them to a situation where, I found myself in.
Awesome. Well, the skills chart or the competency framework is definitely something we could dive deeper into, because I was just the other day talking to one hiring manager who was just sharing with me that he interviewed 10 people for the cloud position. And out of those 10 people, the candidates, even though they seemed to have experience with DevOps and cloud, they were not able to use Terraform to kind of do something with it, right? To debug some issues or to spin up some basic infrastructure. So, I mean, on the surface, it looks relatively easy with those quiet roles. There are certifications from AWS or GCP or Azure. The Terraform is there. There are lots of courses. So people seem to have this skill, but the reality based on the recent experience with interviews is different. So based on your experience now, interviewing all these people, like how to go from a CV that seems to be reasonable to having someone who really can use Terraform, can use Kubernetes, can use AWS, like how to go from the CV to a great profile.
Yeah, it's in terms of the interview process to find out how much skill someone actually has over just say having a certification. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, we see, knowing the theory is one side. So when we have that scoring system, at the first couple of scores, we 1, 2, 3, will be, do you even know what this thing is? And then secondly, will be do you understand the basic theories, like why do we need DevOps? What does DevOps mean? Things like that. To then, do you have any actual experience that you can sort of talk about where you apply different the things that the different theories in practice. But then as you go further and further, it's more about how many burn marks you have on your hands, how many problems you have, you run into, because that's where you really learn how deep someone's experience goes, because everyone can put together simple things, put together a few different AWS services. That's all fine. It's going to work fine. Just about anything will work fine. But when you have a build system that can support millions of users, and they have to be up as close to 100% of the time as possible, those requires specific trade-offs that makes that really kind of shows how deeply someone understands what they're doing and the impact of the decisions that they're making. So a lot of times, as part of the interview process, we start by figuring out, asking if whether or not someone understands the theory, and then have they applied the theory in practice, and if so, have they run into sort of some of the edges in terms of besides the common golden path? Have they stepped outside of that? How well do they? How much of a complete mental picture they have of the services or things that they're actually using? And that's kind of that will kind of show you the mark of an expert, someone who knows not just okay, you do this and that, kind of monkey see, monkey do, but an expert will know, okay, why do we do this, and what happens if we try something else? Well, so maybe try something that's normally considered an anti-pattern, but in specific situations, and understand what those situations are. Then that kind of shows that they have a much more complete picture of the mental model of how things actually work, and can make those decisions. And one way we do that is by, say, asking them to describe a system they've actually worked on in the past, something that they've done from their previous work experience. And this is where the interviewer's experience and skills kind of comes in, because you need to. What I don't like is I don't like to present the interviewer with a particular problem that we are familiar with and ask them to solve that, because they don't have the domain knowledge or the maybe the expertise to sort of think about all the problems that we see every day. Like, okay, we're building systems that are used by millions of concurrent users. So the specific challenges that requires different techniques to kind of, to solve for that. But someone else who haven't done this every day, they wouldn't be thinking about all the problems that we see every day that are natural to us. So instead, what I would like to do instead is to go to meet the interviewer where they are. So take one of the systems that they've worked on, but apply some like a twist. So if they build a system like an e-commerce application, they were doing, I don't know, 100 requests per second or whatever. If we care about scalability a lot, so I'll ask them, okay, your design is fine for whatever you were doing before. What happens if your traffic goes 10x? What would you change? Where do you think are the problems going to show up first? And what are the things that you can do to mitigate those challenges? And of course, that again, that requires the interviewer itself to be fairly skilled and experienced to be able to think about those kind of questions and also to assess the answer from the candidate. And also things like as an engineering team, we were explicit about the things that we care about based on our business requirements. For example, as someone who's streaming live sports, the last thing you want is for the stream to break in the middle of live event. It's not Netflix. You can't just go back and watch it half an hour later. You break a live stream, that's it, it's done. You can potentially lose your license with the rights holder for like J League or Premier League or whatever. So in terms of the different things that we care about as an engineering team, redundancy and resilience is number one, even before scalability. Scalability is number two because we have to think about supporting millions of concurrent users. So those two things are super high on our radar in terms of things that we need to engineer for. And of course, security and other things that comes after that as well. And so for different companies, you're going to have different priorities in terms of things that you care about the most. And so, when I interview candidates, I also often like to just, take what they have built, but throw a twist in there to see, how would they deal with pushing specific requirements to the extreme. And so, if for us, if uptime is redundancy and the resilience is number one, then you got this system. I see you've got a single point of failure there. How would what happens if I say the requirement for your system is now it has to be up? You need to have 99.999 uptime. So what would you do differently? So because it's based on their domain, the system that they worked on, then they should have more, I guess, comfort. Should be more in their comfort zone to take that and start working and tweaking their solution, as opposed to bring them into your domain and say, build this system that serve live streams where they may not have ever dealt with that domain. So that's one of the things I like to do to assess the candidates in terms of just figuring out what do they know, what have they done with that knowledge, and also how far they're able to kind of take what they've built and step out of their comfort zone and into something that maybe they ever had to solve, but do they have the relevant experience and understanding of how everything works to be able to sort of go beyond what they currently are doing.
Awesome. Well, this is just so inspiring to listen to you now talk about the different competencies and the different trade-offs. And I'm kind of thinking, what does it mean for recruiters? Because we can also ask some of these questions. What would happen if you get 10 times more traffic? But it's really hard to assess whether the response is correct, right? Because we have not been working with the technology for the last 10 years. We are kind of interviewing candidates and then proposing potentially good ones for hiring managers. So based on your experience, what can recruiters do to be more valuable to people like you who are in the driver's seat?
I think I see the value of recruiters in removing candidates who are obviously bad fit, and I don't think recruiters should be responsible for assessing, the things I just talked about just now. The engineering team should do that, but recruiters should be able to say, these candidates obviously have no relevant experience, and so if I say, for us, for example, for that, once we have that spider chart, we have a number of straight vetoes. So if someone we think is not a nice person to work with, some red flags in the interview in terms of how they behave, or maybe certain things that that came up in the conversation. Maybe we say, okay, this is not the right person for us from a culture point of view. Again, those even though you may be technically a good fit, but maybe culturally you're not. But I'm really conscious about making that a veto, because it's very easy to people just throw around culture, not a culture fit to just because some small things that they picked up. At the same time, so when you do play that card as the interviewer, you have to have a really good, clear justification for why you think that is a culture fit. What exactly are the things that you saw in the interview that raised that? But sometimes recruiters can do that as well. If we give them a sense of okay, what are the kind of the person that we want to work with. I mean, one of my CTOs used to say this. That he'd rather have a hole in the team than an asshole in the team, because having someone who is a bad influence is going to impact a lot more than just that one person. It's going to impact the entire team. So I think that's very much a valid thing, where you want people in the team that you like working with, that you like to spend 8 hours a day sitting next to, and maybe even spending weekends going out and having fun with. So the right person, but also the right skill set. So one of the things we also do once we have that spider chart is we have some levels, various different levels in terms of, okay, what we think about, is this person more of a junior developer, mid-level, senior, principal, whatnot. So we look at the total score for the different levels, for different things that we capture, and then we kind of put into rough sort of bands in terms of a skill level, total score. But also we have to say, okay, if someone is going to be working mostly on the back end, then there's some minimum score you have to clear. So if say that minimum score is 6 on number of different things, so if you have less than 6 on 3 out of 5, then you're probably not going to be a good fit for us, because we have to spend a lot more time to train you up to the right level for a number of different things. If you are say, for 4 out of 5 things, you are you meet the minimum score, but then for one of them, you are below. We think, okay, we can give you some training. We can help you bring up to the level we need to be a productive member of the team. That's fine. But yeah, maybe the recruiter what they can do is make sure that everyone that bring into the interview process at least has got like a 3 on our scale for the important things that we're gonna be looking for from this candidate based on the role that they're interviewing for. And then it's up to the interview I guess the engineers and maybe managers to then figure out, okay, if this person for say DevOps is it more of a 6 or 7 or 8. The recruiter may not be and shouldn't be be responsible for making those decisions, because again, that comes into the category where you're going to be asking about someone's actual experience and how they may react to different requirements, and then that requires a more engineering know-how and what you're actually looking for to be able to figure out whether or not this is the right candidate for you. And so I don't think recruiters should be responsible for that, but recruiters should be responsible for is figuring out if someone is not a right cultural fit, and also if someone is just obviously below what we're looking for in terms of technical competency.
Yeah, I like how you draw the line between what the recruiters can be responsible for and what they cannot, because it's indeed a challenging job itself, and especially with so many different roles within the cloud and DevOps ecosystem. So, and on this note, actually, I'm kind of wondering, where do you see the market going in the next few years? Because so far there are several roles when it comes to AWS cloud. Some of the roles specialize in security or networking or administration. Like now we have lots of generative AI, machine learning. So with your experience, where do you see the market heading? Like which roles are going to be in high demand going forward?
Obviously, I think because of the rise of Gen AI, I think AI related roles is going to be massively on the up. There's going to be so the traditional sort of AI role are more machine learning roles. So it's about the training models and whatnot. But there's also now a new category of roles. I think Sean Wang and who I had on my podcast actually talk about this the rise of the AI engineer, which is a different category of responsibilities and the jobs where you're not training raw models. You're not training the next big LLM model or whatnot, but instead you're more like kind of the DevOps engineers for traditional web application, for example. You are the one that's but more for machine learning for AI workloads where you are familiar with things like LangChain or whatever the current flavor of the sort of orchestration tooling. You're familiar with the different models, when to use them. You're skilled at the prompt engineering. You're able to take various different building blocks, and then you're able to help the team build some real world application out of those. Because not every problem can be just solved by using a chatbot. In fact, I think a lot of the more interesting use cases for AI is not in chatbots, but is in more mundane things like looking at your calendar, suggesting things to do, or going to or planning holidays, or more things like what Meta has done with the ads is about more intelligent targeting and more efficient allocation of your advertising money. Is in a lot of this kind of more it's kind of boring business requirements, things that require AI. And chatbots is just one small use case of Gen AI. And there's going to be things like, using images to identify defects in the manufacturing and things like that, to be able to use AI models to train to do those things. And for that, you're going to need people who understand Gen AI technology as well, able to use the tool chains like LangChain and other things to then stitch together very different foundational models and maybe fine tuning and whatnot to then help the team build something that's going to add the value to the business. So I think that's going to be a big category of roles that's going to be very big on the market. But just in general, you're still going to have lots of people that need to have experience with AWS, with cloud, with just building the normal day-to-day things. But with Gen AI, maybe you need fewer of them because you have one engineer can do more because they can delegate more things to AI to just spit out lots of code, and then they can play more of a supervisor role to say, okay, are the things that are generated correct, and if not, then with the AI chat with the AI co-pilot or assistant to refine what they've done rather than spending most of the time just typing out whatever's in their head. So I think there may be it's difficult to say. Every time we've had something like this, you end up creating high levels, I guess, roles, replacing some of the more grunt, low level grunt work. And so, I'll imagine, I'll hope that's what's going to happen as well. What I do worry, I think AI assistants are great, especially for more experienced developers, because they can play. They're experienced and knowledge enough to play that supervisor role to guide AI assistants to do what is needed. But maybe I think a lot of people talk about AI assistants like your junior developer. But what happens to the junior developers if their essentially the opportunity was taken up by AI? So that's one of the things that I'm kind of worried about in terms of the next generation of young developers coming into the industry. I think experienced developers can still find work, shouldn't have any problem. But for less experienced young developers, is Gen AI is going to take over, a lot of the opportunities they have today? That's kind of what I worry about. But at the same time, if if you're young, you are malleable, you're open to learning a lot of new things, then jumping into AI right now and understanding technologies like LangChain and different LLM models, how to use them, how to combine them to do with prompt engineering and other things to actually do interesting things, that's also a great opportunity for you to do something. I'm looking at a lot of these AI engineers today. They're really young. They're like in their 20s, maybe even younger. So maybe that is that is what's happening. That maybe there's some of the younger engineers which go straight into AI. So I don't know. That's kind of my hope that there's still going to be ample opportunities for the younger developers to carve out a career and make a living in tech.
And this is very inspiring, and there is some hope at the end of the tunnel, it looks like.
I hope so.
And it's really interesting because 5 years ago we were talking about the JavaScript or TypeScript frameworks, React, Angular, which one is going to be here, the next thing. And today, 2024, we are talking about LLMs and Gen AI and AI engineers and prompt engineers and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting how the whole industry evolves so quickly within just a few years. It's really unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. The whole Gen AI thing came out, and it's just been pretty crazy. The market has been pretty nuts in terms of evaluations and whatnot. But we see right now it's hard to say, just because all the LM models are subsidized massively, so you can't tell the real cost of those technologies. Right now, they're in that early kind of dot-com bubble where everything, all the growth is funded by venture money, and that AI is kind of the only thing being funded right now. And so there's all this massive money going into building data centers, massive compute resources, and NVIDIA graphics cards and whatnot. But all the models are super expensive right now. So I think it was, someone said it costs about 12 times to serve one AI query versus doing a normal Google search. I mean, eventually, with I think things like AI is going to go into more on your mobile, your iPhones, and they would hopefully be cheap enough so that we understand the true cost, and therefore what are some of the opportunities that's actually going to come up in terms of business opportunities. Because right now, if you build something with AI, it can be really expensive. But even then, the cost on you as a business building something with AI is still subsidized by lots of venture funding, but also a lot of big companies. Companies like Meta and Google are probably losing money every time. On even OpenAI is losing money on the users making queries against ChatGPT. So right now it's just hard to say what's the true cost of these technologies, and what happens when it does get adopted at massive scale, that everyone does end up building stuff with AI. What are the true costs to everybody, and not just those LM providers? So yeah, still early to see what's actually going to happen. And also, there's also the whole AI in robotics as well, which is right now it's not impacting the physical work, but AI in the robotics that may change that as well. So let's see.
Well, this is another interesting topic which we could probably dive into some other time, or maybe you also cover this topic with some of the guests in your podcast, because you also run a podcast, right? You are a host.
Yeah, I also do a podcast. It's mostly focused on AWS and serverless, but I do have quite a few people come on and to talk about AI as well, and how AI affects software development, and also just everyday life, because technology is going to impact all of us. Already has. It's going to impact even more people when it goes into the physical world, the physical work that are being done. So, and we still haven't seen AI being really utilized in medical, in medication and the medical care. And I think that's where the next big thing in AI, hopefully, in terms of benefiting human life, is going to happen. So we see, but I spend a lot of time just keeping out on what's going on with the AI side of things and different things that are happening in that space, because it's super interesting, and and also impacts all of us.
Somewhere, and if people are interested in your podcast, where they can find it?
They can find it as go to realworldserverless.com, and there's it's also available on YouTube, as well as on pretty much all the podcasting platforms, Spotify, Amazon Music, or whatnot.
Awesome, great. Well, I'll include the links in the show notes, also to your LinkedIn profile, so that people can connect with you and learn more from your experience, because you are also posting a lot on LinkedIn. So thanks again for sharing your experience and the insights. It's been very helpful, and I learned a lot. I wrote notes, so I guess I'll need to kind of reread some of the notes and probably re-watch our episode again.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.
You take care, guys. Okay, bye-bye.